Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and the author of The Codist, now available, a special price on Kindle. It's either $2.99 or $5.99. They keep playing with it, but it's certainly not $9.99, so get it while you can on the Kindle edition of The Codist. The second edition, now available and back out on the market. You can also get the paperback online as well. Also, the release of my new book, The 7 Laws of Abundant Living, Lessons Learned from the Tree of Life. Go to the bottom of the homepage of ignitingnation.com and click on the book. It'll take you to a little form. Fill out your email address and we'll give you the first chapter for free, and then you can order the book. Today is a day when I'm going to get emotional. We're going to talk about a topic that I've never heard of in 66 years of life, and a topic that is so near and dear to me that it moved me to tears as I read this incredible story of Cori Salchert, who has written a book, I Will Love You Forever, a true story about finding love, hope, and healing while caring for hospice babies. In this book, she shares the precious details of the babies her families have had the privilege of welcoming, knowing, and loving. She reveals why she does what she does on a daily basis and how the act of loving and caring for these children until their final breath has healed her and brought her redemption. A biological mother of 8, Cori's big heart and calling to care for hospice babies made her famous and earned her the title of Hospice Mama when her family's story went viral in 2016. A former perinatal bereavement nurse, Cori began adopting hospice babies while with life-limiting or terminal diagnosis in 2012. She lives in Wisconsin with her husband Mark and their 8 biological children. She takes care of hospice babies, babies with life-limiting medical conditions and diagnosis, all to be the hands and the feet of Messiah. This, my friends, is true religion. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Cori Salchert, author of I Will Love You Forever. Cori, welcome to Revealing the Truth.
Thank you.
You know, this program has dedicated itself to cover the headlines, and we have many political programs. But the heartlines, what's the real meat to me, is when somebody lives in the image of our Messiah. I have been to the neonatal unit of hospitals before, and it's unfathomable to me, the suffering, the almost sense of hope and hopelessness of a 1 pound 8 ounce, 2 pound 4 ounce, 3 pound 1 ounce child who's born prematurely or who is born with life-threatening birth defects. And clinically, I can look through that window and it breaks my heart. But you have taken this to a whole new level. You have gone in there and you've lifted up that baby and held them to you right next to your heart and walked out the door carrying IV poles, bags of medications, ointments, and every kind of conceivable piece of equipment that you could carry, and you bring them home, even if you thought it would be for 1 hour. You give them love, you give them dignity, and you nurture them. Cori, where did this come from? Because this is, to me, the greatest gift of compassion that I've ever had the personal experience of encountering in my 66 years of life.
I've been touched myself by the Messiah. And he has looked past my diagnosis and my sinful condition and has drawn me close and has overwhelmed my heart and my life with his love. And that has been extended then to these children who, need someone to look past all of the equipment, to look past the diagnosis, to look past the scary part, as well as the fact that they are terminal and that they'll die, and to not run, but to stay. And so I have been shown great grace and have been able to then pour it back out.
You have a backstory of your own.
Mm-hmm.
A story that is a diagnosis and your own walk through the valley of the shadow of death.
Yes.
Take us back to before you became the hospice mama.
Have struggled with autoimmune diseases my entire life. Was born sick and was undiagnosed for a number of years. And what I would like to say is that there has been a great deal of suffering in my life. And I have given in to hopelessness and decided that there was no good that was coming from it, that it was meaningless. And I am here to tell you that kind of decision, that God does not know what he's doing and that he is not working all things together for good, is not a good place. And it's a really scary place actually to be, and have drifted into that direction of not understanding why, because I fully believe that God had the ability to heal me, why he could not be bothered to do that. And I phrase it that way, why he could not be bothered, because I certainly asked my husband, I do not understand why it is that God could heal me and why he's not. And I'm never going to have a perfect day where I can stand up in front of him and say, I did it all right today, so please heal me. And God has affected such good through my suffering. So whether it was decisions that I made, whether or not it was the fact that we live in a cursed world, whether or not it was the enemy of my soul who was afflicting me, God said, no, I have a purpose in all of this. I have ordained that you will walk through this valley and come out on the other side, and you will know beyond a shadow of a doubt that I am with you, that my rod and my staff will comfort you. And you can't say that, I don't know, with full assurance until you've experienced it. At least I can't. And so it was head knowledge for a very long time, and then God needed it to be real. That communication had to get from my head to my heart in order to be able to do what I do now, because there has to be steadiness in the face of how much unpredictability there is, in the face of grief, in the face of the suffering, that God indeed is working all things together for good, and that he is close to the brokenhearted and he cannot ignore their cries. So I am not alone in this, even though there are definitely times when it's quite lonely.
You've had the experience that began when you first met Emma Lynn, and her name wasn't Emma Lynn at the time you met her.
Right, she did not have a name.
She was just laying there, lifeless, not moving, not wired up, not all of this attempt, which I see all these fluids and all these warmers and all these things as an attempt to sustain and save the life. But Emma Lynn there was no effort being made.
No, there was because of the lethal anomaly she had where most of her brain was missing, there was what's called futility as far as medical care. So what I bring with hospice is the fact that we're not evading the fact that the person is going to die. We're no longer running from that. We're no longer, it's on the table. It's going to happen. And so I step in, and for me, hospice is all about hope. And you know that they're going to die. And so therefore, you are living very intentionally, and you are cherishing each day, because it very well could be your last. And there's not a lot of time wasted chasing after things that are just meaningless or vanity. And so we were very purposeful in Emmeline's life to give her a life, that to know her, to love her, and then have someone that was weeping when she died. And we fully believe that we are going to be reunited again, but absolutely God knows that there is grief to say goodbye this side of heaven.
Just statistically, you've had 8 biological children.
Mm-hmm. On purpose.
On purpose.
Yes.
All right, I like that.
Yes.
This was intent.
Yes, we're doing.
This was intentional.
Yes.
This is what you wanted. You and Mark together wanted to grow a family.
Mm-hmm.
And then you were called, and it began with Emmeline.
Uh-huh.
How long did Emmeline live?
Emmeline lived for 50 days.
50 days. And you brought her home with you?
Yes, absolutely. We brought her home because hospital is a really good place to be if you are acutely ill. But if it's out of the medical hands to be able to do any kind of procedure or any kind of treatment, then there's no sense in staying at the hospital. So we brought her home.
And you knew when you brought her home that she had no chance of survival?
No, apart from a miracle. I mean, God certainly could have generated a brain, but if he chose not to do that, which then we were going to live out the days that we had, and not do any more poking and prodding and procedures to her, because that was pointless at that. And by no means had we given up hope. We just weren't hoping in some kind of medical cure. We just were hopeful that she was going to have a life before she stepped into heaven.
You loved her.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah. That ship sailed for sure.
And you nurtured her.
Mm-hmm.
And you held her.
Yes.
Knowing that for whatever reason, God allowed her to come into this world with not perfectly formed, but out of her circumstance was birthed your ministry. It takes me to the story of Joseph and all he had to go through to have his ministry birthed, to where he could finally say what the enemy meant for evil to his brothers. What you meant for evil, God worked for his good so that many would be saved.
Yes.
There were 25 years of Joseph's life separated from his family where he suffered for that separation, only to have the nation of Israel birthed out of Joseph's suffering, and then the reuniting of the family.
Yeah.
You turn man's diagnosis into God's celebration. Emmeline would have been left in a rolling crib with minimal attention paid to her until they went by one day and saw that she was no longer breathing. Even if she died an hour after you brought her home, you would have given her something that she would have never had any other way. And that was a family and a name and love and human touch. I personally resonate with this story. When I came through the birth canal, my eardrums ruptured. My mother was very sick, and we were separated. And this is 1952. So you're talking about complete isolation.
Yeah.
The mother's isolated from the child, and the idea, the knowledge of somebody touching and making sure that the child is touched on a regular basis was not the pattern of the early 50s. We didn't have the knowledge of oxytocin and human contact and nurturing. So that time of separation in my life helped form who I am, which is a strong, independent, capable of going out where there is no one and making something out of nothing, because I had that period of separation. So I get close, but only so close, and I know that's the beginning of it. You know, and I've spent 66 years of life working towards that closeness. It's why God brought me an adopted baby, a baby to adopt, not of my own natural, but to something that I had to intentionally embrace and intentionally work at. And you experience the same kind of things with your own struggles and your own issues with physical conditions and in reconciling that. And so here you learn to love the unlovely and to give to those that were not cognizantly aware of receiving.
Right.
You are doing it for them and for God, to give them dignity in whatever life that they had to live. Mm-hmm. When Emmeline, at 50 days old, breathed her last, what were the thoughts that you had? Because you had just spent the last, doesn't seem like a long time, but in this baby's life, it was an eternity.
Yeah.
What were you thinking? What were you feeling?
That last day was a very quote unquote normal day. You know, I had errands to run and we had places to go, and we did it. There was a sense of her being off, but I couldn't necessarily put my finger on exactly what it was that was not normal. And because she was nonverbal, she did not really cry. It was more an intuitive thing that something was not quite right and compatible with life. And I have a favorite song by Sherry Easter, and it says, "You know all the ways I need you, you know all the ways I'm weak, so I'll be quiet so you can hear my heart." And that was more my prayer to God, was I'm not quite sure what's happening here. I don't know if I should do something or not do something. And Emmeline was held close, and she continued to be fed. And my belief is that God says that our days were numbered, and that He is sovereign over all, and He knows how long it is that we are going to be here, and when our mission is accomplished. And so my point in even taking care of these kiddos is to mitigate whatever suffering it is that I can in that day, and not think, oh, you know, that I could have extended their life, or that I shortened it by something that I did. Now, I don't want to be making mistakes, and I am human, but there is a trust that God is going to help me do what I need to do, and that it is going to be helpful and not harmful. And so Emmeline, throughout the day on that Wednesday, just was a little fluky and breathing more and more shallowly. And by that evening, by about 10 o'clock that evening, having done my work as a hospice nurse, I've been a nurse for almost 30 years. The telltale signs were there that things were shutting down. She was not able to receive the formula anymore and eat. And my son, who was 12 at the time, he said, "But Mom, what if she can't eat?" And I told him, I said, "Well, if she's getting ready to go to heaven, then she doesn't need to bother with any more formula here." And so she was not able to eat, and her arms and legs were very cold because, as God would have it, the circulation is there for all the internal organs and for the brain. And so when it's not working real super effectively, the arms and legs will get cold because that's considered not absolutely necessary. So the arms and legs were cold and were mottled. And what I did was I took off my own clothes and put on my very heavy, warm bathrobe, and I took off Emmeline's clothes except for her diaper. And I laid her on my chest so that we were skin to skin, which is called Kangaroo Care if you're an OB nurse. And that was a way to transmit warmth to the baby. And it was something that was a total comfort measure. Emmeline was not struggling. She was not seizing. She was not in pain. And I held her as close as humanly possible, and her head was right here on my chest with her ear against my heart. And we could not have been any more close than we were at that moment. And I was trying to sing a song, which for her probably wasn't necessarily very pleasant, but they had said that she couldn't really hear, so that was a blessing at that point in time. And she just slowly stopped breathing and slipped away and woke up in heaven. And she was right where I wanted her to be, right where I wanted her to be. And she was not alone, and she was loved, and she was cherished up until the moment she stepped into heaven.
And it was on the 50th day.
Yes.
You know that in Hebrew, that's the day of Jubilee.
Yes.
And so when you connect this to Emmeline's life lasting 50 days, it was her Jubilee day.
Yes.
And as a Jewish believer, I look at it and see how fitting that
yes.
your ministry was birthed in a day of celebration, not a day of mourning. That if I connect the dots of the 50th day to the Jubilee, then I see how Emmeline and this experience that you went through should birth a new season of new life and new breath and new beginnings for you. Now, you have, right now you're sitting in the hospital with your 14-year-old son, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and when you brought him home, what was his condition?
He has a degenerative brain disease.
And he was given how long to live when you brought him home?
Could have died at any point, and it's been a year, so.
So it's been a year. So
yeah.
Medical science says it could be any moment, and the hospice mama has applied a double portion of love and nurturing and attention and care and awareness and focus and providing him. And you say, if today's a good day, he'll probably come home today.
Yeah.
And the process is not a waiting for the end. It's not a morbid approach. It is the extension of life and the embracing of the life that's to be lived by giving dignity to those who have been given diagnosis that only God is the decider of the when.
Yes.
Or even the if, because you have fostered other children that have come into your home and have been placed with other families.
Right.
The other children that you are taking care of now, how many hospice children do you have under your care right now?
We have two. Charlie is almost 4, and then our other kiddo is 14.
Okay, and what goes through your mind? Does the hospital call you and say we've got one for you, or how does this whole process work? And what role do you and Mark, because Mark is your husband,
Right.
and you can't do this without him because you have some of your own physical challenges that flare up periodically, where he becomes a caregiver to a caregiver, which is one of the unique situations of caregiving to caregivers.
Yeah. We are licensed as medical treatment foster care. And so we are able to take care of medically needy children. And some of them have been medically needy, but did not have terminal diagnoses. And so they are fine because it was not a end of life situation at all. So they are good. And then we also just have our niche where I had thought, I just kind of did babies, and then the 14-year-old came up and was like, he needs a family too. And so it still fit our niche as far as doing hospice care, terminal diagnosis, but he's certainly not a baby. He's a big guy. So if someone had wanted to be able to do this and had hospice background, medical treatment foster care is how it is that it works where we live. But if they wanted to be able to get into it, then certainly go to your local foster care agency and let them know I would like to be able to be a foster parent. And this is the niche that I'm looking at, because you can say you want a teenager with these kind of issues, or you want a 2-year-old with these kind of troubles, and you can decide whether or not it's medical or whether or not it's behavioral. There's a great deal of play. There are, I think there's 400,000 foster children and new ones being born all the time that are in the NICU whose families walk away because it's more than what they can deal with. So Emmeline's situation is really not that unusual. Anyone who has spent any time in the NICU knows that there are babies that lay there hour after hour, day after day, and no one comes to visit.
So there's an opportunity right now for families who are called to foster care to venture into an area of nurturing 400,000 babies.
Or 400,000 children that are in the foster care, yes.
All right, and then in the NICU, what percentage of those are in the newborn category or within the first couple months of life?
I don't actually have the statistics on that. I just know that there is such an opioid crisis in our nation, and a lot of these babies are born drug affected. They are not drug addicted because they have not made a choice to be addicted, but they are certainly drug affected. And parents, in an effort to be able to get them reconciled, need to have a separation, at least for a time, so that the baby can recover and the parents can get back on their feet and do what they need to do. So there is a huge need there for parents to step up and take drug-affected babies for however long until they can possibly get back with their parents. And you have to go into this very committed and yet holding loosely, because reconciliation, reunification is almost always the goal. And so you may have to give that child up, but for the time that they were in your arms, they can be well taken care of and not have continuing trauma, making it harder for them to recover as they grow up.
When you go to, well, do you and Mark pack them up on Sunday morning and take them all to church?
Well, we don't typically do that in the winter time because it's a little hairier with their wheelchairs in the lift. But yes, absolutely. Once the weather gets warmer, we do pack them up. We have a van that has been accessorized with a wheelchair lift, and so both of our boys right now in their wheelchairs fit in the back. And so we can take them and go down the road with the windows down and just have a little bit of a change of scenery and take them for a ride. We do take them to church. Now, I will say this, Charlie is generally well behaved at church. The 14-year-old gets a little freaked out by the noise, so we put earmuffs over his ears, and we sort of hope that he sleeps all the way through service, but he still gets out.
Without your relationship with God, or what you thought was your relationship with God, what's changed through this process between you knowing God, knowing about God, having a personal relationship with God? How has faith been a factor in you being able to step out and take a child who you know has every chance of dying and very few chances of surviving, and even a smaller chance of thriving, but yet none of that is a barrier to you. As a matter of fact, it's an invitation to you. And it sounds like it's an invitation from God.
Well, to be honest, if I did not have a hope beyond the grave, this would be a really depressing way to live. I mean, in all honesty, I have a hope beyond the grave, and God's calling on my life has been one of, do you trust me? Period. And he had to bring me through a time where he said, you know what, you've set up all of these conditions that as long as your mortgage is paid and your children are healthy and you're healthy and things are going like you want them to, then I'm good. And then what happens is God is just, hold on one second.
We're talking with Cori Salchert, author of I Will Love You Forever, a true story about finding love, hope, and healing while caring for hospice babies. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue our discussion with Cori. Back. Shalom. I'm the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, Executive Director of Igniting a Nation and host of the daily TV program Revealing the Truth, seen live every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time at www.ianbn.com, and then replayed throughout the day and night via our website. All of our segments can be seen on the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel. Since our launch in January of this year, we've expanded our global reach to over 54 countries with a social media following of over 125,000. Our commitment is to bring you the most in-depth interviews with authors, subject matter experts, and thought leaders from around the world. We have interviewed guests from Israel, Brazil, England, India, and all across North America. All of our authors are featured on the Books and Media page on our website, www.ianbn.com. There you can find a direct link to the book you want to order, and we receive a small commission directly from Amazon. There is no cost to you for this service. In addition to our daily teachings and interviews, we make available to you the archive of all of the interviews on our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram channels. Our live program is available from our homepage, and there is never a charge to you for any of this access. We made the decision long ago that we would remain a commercial-free resource that would not be influenced by any pressure from any outside company. There are only two ways that we are able to continue to operate this ministry and provide you with the only live 4-hour daily Christian television talk show program. The first is through your support and tax-deductible contributions to Igniting a Nation. These can be made directly through the donate button on the website or sent through the mail to Igniting a Nation, 2700 Corporate Drive, Suite 120, Birmingham, Alabama, 35242. The other way we support the program is by offering you a unique opportunity to have access to over 10 years worth of teachings on a subscription basis. The teaching archives contains all of my prior sermons, Torah studies, prophecy in the news videos, and much more for the low subscription price of $5 per month. This subscription grants you unlimited access to over 800 hours of content not available elsewhere and is updated weekly with the most current prophecy classes. In addition to 20 hours of original TV programming each weekday, we invite you to join us live every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday evenings for our Prophecy in the News classes. The times and locations are listed on our events page on the website www.ianbn.com. Every day, you and I are faced with the challenge of where we will go to hear the truth. We are committed to bring you the only program of its kind that covers the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. We cannot do this without your support. Since we launched on January 5th, 2017, we have aired over 300 individual teachings, interviews, and commentaries not available anywhere else. We are now working side by side with almost every major Christian publishing house to bring you the most in-depth feature interviews possible. Our one-hour features address every subject that affects the believer's life. We are hearing of salvations from the Middle East, Africa, and all across the United States. Lives are being changed every day, and we have only just begun. Our mission is to become your trusted resource and grant you access to the people, tools, and information you need to grow in your relationship with the Lord. You can help us by liking us on social media and through your financial support. We know you have many choices in who you support, but we are prayerfully asking you to consider helping us keep revealing the truth, true to our calling, to cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth like no other program available. Donate today and help us bring the message to the four corners of the earth. Visit www.ianbn.com and donate, buy a book, or subscribe to our teaching archives. Without you, we do not exist. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Cori Salchert, author of I Will Love You Forever, a true story about finding love, hope, and healing while caring for hospice babies. Cori, welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
Cori, this calling, you heard it clearly when you saw Emmeline. Your husband, now you come back, and is he a part of this? And how is he hearing and confirming and seeing and feeling what you are hearing, seeing, and feeling at the same time? This is such a magnificent responsibility and calling that you two shared together. When was his revelatory moment, or was he just following the lead of a loving, devoted wife?
My work with families whose babies died either in the womb or after birth was something that I did for a number of years, and then broached the subject with my husband and asked him whether or not, actually I told him, I said, I think that this would be a really great idea, that if there was a baby that mom and dad were not able to stay because the baby had a fatal fetal anomaly, that we would take that baby home and love that baby for whatever time they had before they passed away. And wouldn't that be wonderful? And he was not enthusiastic. He said, you don't leave the grief at work. You certainly bring that home with you. And we already have all the kids at home. We're homeschooling. You're working. I'm working. This is just not a good fit for our family. And so that I knew that it was not going to work if I was forcing it, because it is incredibly stressful to have a medically needy child. It just is. You have to drop everything and run when that kiddo needs you, and to take that on without being in agreement was just a recipe for disaster. And Mark and I don't even need to have a good reason to annoy each other. So that was tabled. Yes, we have a plaque on our wall that says marriage is finding that special person you want to annoy for the rest of your life, and we have certainly found each other. So almost 30 years later, we're still kicking, but we didn't need to add in extra stress that he was saying no and I was just saying yes.
Right.
So by no means is this an individual decision that I force my family into it and they have to just abide by my wishes. This is a cooperative effort. Absolutely. And for those women who would love to be able to do this and their husband is not on board, then their best bet is to pray, because that's what I did. And I thought, I think that this would be a good idea, but I don't know everything. And maybe this would not be such a great idea for our family. So then over the process of the next 3 years, I became deathly ill and nearly died. And then in the recovery from that, was not exactly sure what it was that God was going to do with me, because he left me again. And you know what one amazing thing is? He did that to Jacob. Jacob was whole and well before he wrestled. And then he left that encounter disabled.
Right.
And so that is how it is that God has worked in my life, and he has left me disabled on purpose. And there's a dependence on him that I would not have if I was, feeling amazing and was perfectly whole and well. I probably would be running right on up ahead and saying, come on, catch up. Instead, he keeps me quite close because of the disabling health issues that he's continued to have in my life. But my husband, at that point in time, has had his heart shaken to the core and had realized that death was not worst case scenario, that walking away and saying, no, I don't want you because you have X, Y, and Z wrong with you, was not the way God wanted him to live his life. And so he embraced Emmeline and did not know exactly where it was going to go, but also the impact that a woman can have in her family is that you can inspire confidence that God indeed is going to carry you through by believing that yourself. And then that sets it up for others to see firsthand that, yes, this looks like something that's going to be more than we can handle, but yet you have a belief that God is going to carry us through. All right, we'll do this. And so my family has embraced this kind of care and has seen God provide day in and day out. And we don't know, and we are human and we are frail. And there are certainly times when we wonder, oh my goodness, what in the world did we get into? However, we come back to realize that the child is not the problem. The child is simply revealing that our faith has weaknesses that need to be addressed, and that we have opportunity to grow and to trust God in ways that we might not have done before, and to find him faithful. And so for that, we have to be very grateful and thankful to these kids for the trials, which produce perseverance and endurance, and in turn produce hope. Because once you've struggled through something and you come through it and you make it, it's like, yes, God was faithful. He was there for us now. So why should we then why should we doubt that he won't be here for us now? No. And I think that that's one of the reasons why he set up all of those festivals and things like that in the Old Testament, because we're so prone to forget where he has led us in the past. And he said, don't forget, I am the Lord your God, and he doesn't change.
Well, you're exactly right. Now, your 8 biological children that are looking at mom and dad, and they're participating. Now they have new brothers and sisters. Are they engaged in this process as well? Are they in the nurturing? Are they learning to be hands and feet? Do you see God using this to birth in them this gift of compassion and a ministry call that they want to do good in the world and make the world a better place as a reflection of the Messiah, the way their mother and father are doing so?
Well, I certainly believe so. I think that my children have expressed to me and have shown that they are a little less self-centered, that things need to be about them, but that they are able to give unconditionally, because these children, their eyes do not light up. Charlie has never smiled. The way he expresses affection is to hold out his hand because he wants you to kiss his palm. So it isn't that he's not without a recognition that he knows that we're there, but it is not it's not a normal child responding where, you know, you just have that immediate gratification. But I do want to say that most of my children are adults. I have 3 of them still at home, 22, 18, and 16-year-old. But I have, just case in point, my 24-year-old is a missionary in Thailand. And she has a children's home that she's kind of the one who manages that. She has 13 children that are not living on the street or part of the sex trafficking industry, because she is willing to pour into those children and be a mother and make them take showers and make them do their homework and the laundry's done and take them to school. And those are all things that she needed to do at home. And God has taken that and has given her a heart for the least of these. And then she's been taken halfway around the world, and she's in Thailand working that out. So absolutely, I think our children catch our faith rather than just being preached to.
I'm just so moved and so stunned by this story, and that you will continue to open your home for additional children as the Lord provides, as the opportunity provides. You're sitting there in a hospital next to your son, who has far surpassed the life expectancy that the medical community had given him, has far surpassed the capability of communicating even with putting out a hand, so that you can convey a message back and forth, that there's at some level a connection to the living God through the love of a mother so devoted that you haven't left his side, that you would take this interview in a hospital room in hopes and pray that those who are watching will be praying for you to be able to take your son back home and reunite the family, and that God will continue to use you and Mark to touch the lives of those that have been abandoned, those that have been left because of drug problems, because of fetal alcohol syndrome, because of the problems associated in a society where the father is an abandoner, not a nurturer or a present, where there are young girls who are finding themselves debating, do I abandon or do I abort? In this case, you're telling them that it's better to abandon to a hospital under the laws which exist in so many states, safe haven laws, that if
all
you
50 states, yes.
all 50 states
all
have
50 states, there's a safe haven law that a baby can be safely relinquished at a hospital or a fire station, and as long as that baby is unharmed, there are no questions asked, there is no criminal record, there is no legal chasing down. This is a way to be able to say, I can't cope, but the baby is safely relinquished and not left somewhere where harm will come to it or death.
You know, this is so important because we have such, we have this battle that the leading cause of death in America is abortion, and it's 100% preventable. And we talk about adoption, but relinquishment under the safe haven laws is something we need to talk more about. We need to get that message out there more, that you can go to a fire station, police station, hospital, and relinquish the child unharmed and just say, I cannot care for this child, and there'll be no questions asked. You are doing the right thing, and you are doing and blessing, not only are you blessing the child, but the family who receives that child also receives a blessing, and you too become the hands and feet of God because you are doing the right thing for that for that born child. No longer is an unborn, but now it's brought into this world. Cori, you are a hero.
Thank you.
You and Mark are doing something that I've never even heard of, and I will become an advocate and recommend every person I know to start looking into hospice for babies. I know people who are retired and are looking for a purpose and for a ministry in their life. And imagine hospice for babies, even if you're not even allowed to bring the baby home, to go down to the NICU and register and sign up to be able to go in there and spend an hour touching a child. You have no idea what that's going to do for them, that they feel a connection and they feel the hand of God through your hands, through Mark's hands, and through anyone who does this kind of work. It is miraculous. I highly recommend you tell the story, you show the pictures, you show a couple sitting at Emmeline's graveside. This is real. This is going to touch your heart. It's going to break your heart for God, but it's going to break your heart even more for that abandoned child, and want you to look at the opportunity that lays before you, that God may be calling you to enter into this area of becoming a hospice mama, just like Cori Salchert. Thank you so much for being with us and sharing your story with us. May God bless you and keep you and bless all the works of your hands.
Thank you so much.
God bless you. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.